Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. It is about 5:45 a.m., Thursday, May 22nd, which is an important day for me. It is actually, believe it or not, it is actually my birthday. I am 42 years old, which is pretty wild to think about. Loud truck back there doing something. Anyway, yeah. Oh, big truck coming. Hang on, I gotta get out of the way. You guys are gonna see a big truck. Anyway, I'm 42 though, and I'm old, and apparently there's a big tractor coming, so I'm gonna get out of the way while this happens. And yeah, so but yeah, birthdays. When you get older, birthdays are just a day sometimes. It's gonna be very loud. Give it a second. Okay, sorry about that. At 5 in the morning. Houses being built around here, I guess. Anyway, when you get older, birthdays are they're just a day, you know, and when you are a, you know, older male, sometimes, you know, I'm hard to shop for, but it's not a big deal. It's birthdays are just a day, you know? So anyway, let's see. Yesterday was one of those work days where I had a lot of one-on-ones with various people on my team, trying to make sure things are good, doing that manager part of my job, and then proceeded to, from around 6 to 8:30 p.m., do some set 15 balance work, which was cool. Felt very productive. Got it all done, but it was a very busy day. So one of those longer days where I didn't really get to think about much else other than work, and then it's 9 p.m. and then that's your day. So, you know. All right, we have some good questions today that are actually pretty tough. These are going to be some of the toughest questions where I think, again, a lot of people are wondering what's the magic behind the curtain, and sometimes there really isn't that much magic. But let's dive into it. And first one is, I wrote them down too. One of them has a lot of details I have to remember. So, all right. So the first one is, what is the line between unhealthy and fun? And this is such a hard question because basically with any mechanic, you know, the question is, especially in a PvP game where fun can inherently be, you know, some people will claim it's zero sum, right? Where like the more fun one person's having, the less fun the opponent is having. You know, so where is that line and how do you define that line? And if you think about this one, it's really hard because everybody is going to have a different subjective opinion, right? If it's up to me to make the call of where that line is, I'm going to make that call differently than someone like Kent or someone like Giovanni or someone like Blue Velvet, right? Like every player is going to have their own player taste for what is fun for them. You know, if we hired Dish Soap and had him make the call, what his line is would be very different, right? And so generally when you have this wide audience with a bunch of different flavors, someone has to be responsible for making a judgment call of where that line is. And there's no shortcut. There's no magical framework that you can be like, here's the thing. But what you can do is try to create guiding rules that help define if something is fun or not. So an example of this, and there's one principle I think is very important in TFT, is that at its core, TFT is a game where over the course of a 30-minute game, and yes, I know games actually go 40 minutes, but over the course of the first 30 minutes, you are using your resources and building them up to build a cool team with a really neat carry that you want to see do cool things, right? Like whether it be your Morgana dotting everything, or your Aphelios attacking really fast, or your Zeri dashing all over. You build this comp so that you can see that fully stacked carry at the end do really, really cool things, and you want to see, you can almost compare it to one of those Rube Goldberg machines where it's like, you want to build your Rube Goldberg machine and see what it can do. And that's fun. And so the guiding principle here is that every player, when they build that machine, should be able to see it function, and anything that heeds that functionality to an extreme degree is unhealthy. So, for example, let's say you're building a Zeri comp and you've worked really hard, and you've got your 7 Exotech in, and your Ginsus and your Radiant IE, and somehow you high rolled a Radiant Gunblade, and you're like, I can't wait to see this happen. And if the very first thing that happened was a Shaco jumped on that Zeri and instant shot her, you don't get to see your Zeri do anything. That feels very fun, or very unfun, and that crosses into what we would define as unhealthy, because you didn't get to see your machine operate. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I can't impede your machine a little bit, right? A Sejuani ult, which will stop that Zeri in her tracks a little bit, is an example of where, like, hey, I can slow down your machine. I'm allowed to, like, throw a little kink in your machine or your team, but you still get to see it operate, right? And so that's where rules like, well, your carry can't die in the first, like, 6 seconds, assuming they're fully built up, or, CC can't last forever. And this will lead to another question later today, but, like, this is where things like Mono Reave can be really frustrating, because it's like, well, now I don't get to actually cast my spell because I've been Mono Reaved and I don't get to do anything, right? And so generally, when it comes to unhealthiness, one of those guiding principles is let the army I built up do its thing, right? Another example of a principle here could be that, anything that decides the outcome of a game early is incorrect and unhealthy. Now, this is one where the line is pretty thin, but, if, dumb example, let's say, and this is where it, like, rides the line, but, let's say 6 Boombot was overtuned to be an instant win. And then a game starts, and it was possible to get 2 Boombot emblems on 2-1, right? Whether maybe Golem start into emblem, and then 6 Boombot was prismatic level. It's like, well, this is sort of unhealthy, because now we know the player will hit 6 Boombot on, like, level 6, and now the game has been decided so early that, again, before that team has even been built up, the outcome is decided. Now, why I say this is thin is that someone right now is probably going, oh, you mean if they get a single Anima Squad emblem, the game's over? It's like, no, because even there, they still have to get to level 9. There are still some hurdles to jump through, which is why I'm specifically using the 6 Boombot example. It's like, you have to, like, you would guarantee it 100%, right? No one's stopping anyone from hitting level 6. So, and like I said, it's still a fine line, and everything is subjective. Oftentimes when we make a mechanic, there are, like, people on the team who are going, this is really fun, and other people on the team going, this is kind of bullshit. This isn't fair. And so it takes a bit of training to understand sort of where that line is. And that's kind of been my job on the team over the years. It's just sort of like, we've done enough different mechanics and enough different things where I'm kind of like, hey, this isn't going to work, or this is going to be a problem, and things like that. But other than those guiding principles, it is still a subjective matter. And I guarantee you, if some Challenger player was watching this right now, they would probably list off 5 things. They're like, well, Mort got it wrong because I still think these things are bullshit and unfun. And it's true, right? I mean, hell, prismatic traits themselves, I think, are a great example of something that is subjectively right on that line, where a lot of our players freaking love them. All they want to do is chase prismatic traits all day. But then I watch a Froden co-stream, and every time someone gets close to a prismatic, they go, here comes the sarcasm. Oh, they got 10 Anima Squad, blah, 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 So it's one of those things that does not have an easy answer. But the good news is, it's funny, PvP games, it's tougher because zero sum. But let's take a look at a game like Dark Souls, right? Dark Souls, inherently some of the mechanics that someone would call unfun is exactly why players love Dark Souls. The first time I played Dark Souls, I was like, this is so stupid. They're not telling you anything. I remember, it was Bloodborne. I was playing the Bloodborne not tutorial, but like early game. You do the thing where you actually like start the game. And you go down this path, killing pretty easy enemies. And you come to a fork in the road. Left or right? Doesn't tell you anything. I went left. Okay, I go left. I walk up to an enemy. Enemy one-shots me. I'm dead. And someone watching me at the time was like, should have gone right. What? I was like, this is so unfun. This is so stupid. But the person watching me, who was a big Bloodborne fan, was like, no, that's the fun. You got to explore. It's trial and error. And so again, it's a subjective opinion, right? Like the thing that made games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne so successful could be debatably said is unfun. And again, I bring this up as an example because there is no magic framework for here is what all players will find fun. And even if you think you know it, right, like general game design practices before Dark Souls would have said, don't do these things. But they ended up being very, very successful. So, okay, cars are just crazy today. Yeah, another car today. So, but yeah, hopefully that kind of gives you an answer and an idea. But yeah, I think that's basically, anything I'd say from here, I think would get a little redundant, but yeah, it's a judgment call, subjective, use some guiding principles, but yeah. Cool. Okay. Okay, yeah, this is the long question. Okay. So the question here is, the player is like, hey, there are certain mechanics we've seen in TFT before that we don't see anymore. So what made them problematic? And so, like, this was, like I said, going back to, again, what's unhealthy versus not fun, or fun. So let's go through these mechanics one by one. The first one is mana drain. Mana drain was something we saw in set 1 from the trait Demon, as well as set 1 Kassadin, who would do an auto attack that would steal your mana. Well, if you go back to my earlier description, mana drain prevents your machine from working, right? Imagine if you had a Sejuani in the front line, and a Kassadin is just repeatedly auto-attacking that Sejuani. That Sejuani never gets to cast her spell. Your machine doesn't get to work. And so you invested all these items and setups into Sejuani to live that character fantasy of locking down the enemy team. And they went, nah, I'd win. That's not very fun. It's very frustrating. Demon in particular, which also had like Evelyn who would jump on the back line. It's like you would have this, imagine you have a brand on the back line and an Evelyn auto-attacking that brand. And brand just never gets to cast. And you're like, but I built this machine. I want to see it work. So that's why mana drain, and typically we don't have a ton of effects that cause enemy teams to be significantly worse, because that means, again, your machine doesn't get to work. So mana drain has not been around, and we learned that one real quick because I think set 1 is literally the only time we've had mana drain. But yeah, it was a very, very like punishing mechanic. Next mechanic, taunt. Taunt is one that in theory, it's an RPG thing, right? I'm going to have a tank who's going to taunt, pull aggro off, and do good things. The problem with taunt is that it really only works in melee range or somebody who's max range. And for our end, it caused a lot of bugs. Like when we implemented taunt, it didn't quite work right. And so what would happen is it'd be really frustrating where you would have a ranged champion. Let's say you have a backline Caitlyn and a Zed's on that Caitlyn and you're attacking the Zed And then all of a sudden a taunt happens, and now you're not attacking the Zed. It was like, well, that's annoying. I had this guy on me. Why am I being taunted? That feels weird. But the weird thing is, taunt inherently feels like a melee thing. It's like there should be a range on taunt, right? Where it's like, only taunt the people within 2 AoE hexes. Well, that's usually only melee champions. But melee champions, it's weird. So imagine you have an Olaf fighting a Darius, and then 2 hexes over, a Sejuani taunts. Does the Olaf have to stop attacking the Darius and walk over to the Sejuani? What if there's no open hexes, right? Like, melee champions having to go from I am currently attacking to I should stop attacking and move is very antithetical to how our movement and behavior system works. You know, our behavior system is like, if you can attack, else move. But this is like, well, if you can attack, except if being taunted, then move, but how long do you chase them? And this would come up with Zerat Portal when Zerat Portal taunted. And it was like, well, the bug is running away from me. How long should I be chasing it? Is it for like 1 second, 10 seconds? You know, and so overall it made our game's movement and behavior, which felt intuitive, feel very, very unintuitive. So in the end, I made the call that like, we weren't seeing gains from this mechanic that were worth all the pain it was causing. So let's cut taunt. I do think there's still some interest in finding ways to make tanks be the aggro holder they should be, but taunt doesn't seem to be it. All right, next mechanic, blind. Blind is weird. Blind. So when you think about blind and you simplify it, what is a blind? Well, in a way, it's a stun that only works on auto attackers, because what blind basically said was all your auto attacks do 0 damage, but your spells still work. That's what blind was. But it also allows you to still generate mana through auto attacking. And so blind kind of fell into our bucket of what we call hard counters, right? So let's say you're playing a Teemo, and that Teemo has blind, and your first opponent is a Zeri. Blind is going to hurt, right? Like, I blind you for 3 seconds. That's essentially 3 seconds where you can't deal damage. That's painful, right? Like, that's essentially a 3-second stun of you don't get to deal damage. Now, I do this, and my next opponent is a Brand. I blind the Brand for 3 seconds. That ain't doing shnikes. That's doing nothing. That Brand is taking, who cares? My auto attacks do nothing, and then I still cast my spell, and I still wreck you, right? And so that output being so variant based on the matchup created essentially a hard counter situation. But again, you don't have control over that, right? Like if you play Teemo, you just have to accept that you counter every Zeri, but lose to every Brand. That doesn't feel good. Whereas instead, if that same Teemo spell is just stun the target for 1.5 seconds, well, you equally hit the Zeri and the Brand. Both of them get slowed down for 1.5 seconds, right? It's no longer a hard counter. It works equally on all opponents and has the same output. And so stuns are generally just a much more healthy version of blind. So why keep blind in the game? So that's blind. Next up is cleanse. Okay, cleanse, there's nothing necessarily wrong with cleanse, but it had 2 problems. The first one is that it often feels buggy. When you get cleansed, so imagine your Sejuani just ulted, the ult just lands, you see everyone get stunned, and then instantly one of the champions starts moving around again. You're like, what the hell? Most of the times when that happens, the player's immediate reaction is, this was bugged. I stunned that guy and then he broke out. Because cleanse has never been one of those things that's like visually demonstrated very well. And so you end up in this situation where players just think it's bugged. It's also not like, it's invisible power where it's like not very appreciable. But then to tie it all off, in the Gangplank version, which is the most recent time we did cleanse, which, man, I was mad when I found out that shipped. I was like, who put this here? Because it's tied to mana, you end up in this really weird situation where, okay, if let's say you're Gangplank and you're up against a Sejuani and the Sejuani stuns you and then you reach full mana, are you allowed to cast your spell because you're stunned? And the basic rule was, well, yeah, because my spell says cleanse stun. But it's weird that's like, well, then what does stun do to you? Well, nothing. Stops you from auto-attacking again? It's very weird. So, again, it just creates very unintuitive states. It also then puts you in a situation where there's almost no counter, right? Like, in a champion like Gangplank's case, because you could just generate mana, cast, heal, repeat, if you can always cleanse and always, like, what can stop you? There's literally no counter, right? Whereas at least right now on live, let's say back when Rengar was strong, you could at least counter Rengar with like a nice stun, on like a 1 second stun or a knock up from Alistar or something, right? There are ways to stop his, infinite healing. But cleanse creates a situation, if there's a cleanse on that spell, they just go infinite. And so the unintuitiveness, the buggy feeling, the lack of counterplay, cleanse is something I typically try to make sure we avoid. Next up, untargetability. This is actually one that I don't actually think is problematic. I think untargetability is fine when used right. Where it becomes problematic is when it's constant aggro dropping, right? There's something very frustrating about attacking a Zed, and then he casts, and you drop aggro. And then you get on him again, and he drops aggro again. That is very frustrating. And again, it goes back to the machine not working. Your inability to take down that target despite you following all the rules. Very frustrating. But let's say you made a item, make up a fake item here, that said, you are untargetable until all the enemy's other champions are dead. Which is kind of like Soulbound, which is the next question. That doesn't necessarily bother me, right? Like, especially if you're only untargetable, not invincible, right? So, like, imagine you're untargetable, but you can still get stunned by an AoE Sejuani ult. Okay, seems fine. It might actually be a pretty cool mechanic if properly power budgeted. So, untargetability I don't see as problematic. Now, the next one was Soulbound. Soulbound, on the other hand, was untargetability and invincibility. That's a problem, right? Like, literally not being able to stop the Lucian was insane. And in particular, at the time, this was merged with Guardian Angel, which essentially created, and Zhonya's would do the same thing, but essentially create a moment where there's Senna alive, being Guardian Angeled, and Lucian, who's in the Soulbound state, unleashing damage, and you can't do anything, right? You just have to sit there and take it for 3 seconds. Now again, Zhonya's I think is the closest. Zhonya's is essentially Soulbound state for one champion, and it's kind of strong, but it's probably the healthiest version of that untargetability you're going to get. So that frustration factor is one of those things that has kind of prevented that. All right, there's a couple more, or one more. Oh, this one, invulnerability. Okay, so the example given with invulnerability is Oxforce. We love Oxforce. No, we don't. Okay, here's the problem with invulnerability. Let's say you have a 3-star 4 cost, or hell, even a 3-star 5 cost, but let's go 3-star 4 cost. And their spell says hit for 4,000 damage. Okay? If the opponent casts a shield, well, you're still going to do 4,000 damage to them, and you're going to kill them. But if they're invulnerable, your 4,000 damage is just going to get completely nullified, right? And so the ceiling of power that an invulnerability can provide defensively is infinite. It's infinite power, which is insane, especially for something like Oxforce, which was uncontrollable, right? Like, Oxforce essentially said, your champions cannot be one-shot ever. And in TFT, that's pretty unfun. Again, going back to the machine, you worked really hard to make this machine that's powerful enough to one-shot people. And Oxforce goes, nope, just kidding, you can't do that. Feels really, really bad. And so that's, oh God. That's why we ended up changing it to like a very large shield, because if your machine could do enough damage to go through that shield, you could still kill them, but it wasn't true invulnerability. Now, for those of you who are going, oh, what about Zhonya's? Zhonya's is invulnerability. No, Zhonya's is, again, untargetability. Your champions will not waste their ults trying to hit the Zhonya's champion, right? When Zhonya's procs, they drop aggro, or if they're the last thing, your champions will stand there at full mana, waiting their turn, and then unleash, which is much healthier. If Zhonya's did not drop aggro, that item would go on every single tank and be the most busted thing in the game, right? Because 3 seconds where you're literally absorbing infinite damage is insane. Invulnerability is the ultimate defensive output. It's better than, like, which would you rather have, invincibility or 10,000 armor? It's like, invincibility, because even a 10,000 armor champion can still die, you know? And so that infinite defense is just unhealthy for the game. So no, we don't love Oxforce. All right, there's all the mechanics. I got through them all. This video is longer today because of the early tractor stopped me. All right, we got one more question today. Pretty easy one, actually. It's, now that you're not streaming, how have your weekend been? How have you been enjoying that time? The answer is I probably haven't been using it as much as I should, but I've definitely been doing some stuff. I definitely sleep in, and I use air quotes here because instead of getting up at 4 a.m. to start streaming, I'm now getting up at 6:30. Woo! My body doesn't let me sleep in. I don't have an alarm set every morning. I just wake up. That's just how I am. Again, creature of habit. So don't really sleep in that much. Now, some things I've done since the streams have stopped. I did 2 streams on my alt channel, which was kind of fun, playing other games. It's always nice to play other games and see what's going on. My wife and I went out and had my daughter babysit, so I got to spend some time with my wife. We're now at the point where Leo can babysit for like 3 hours. Watch the dog, because really my son's actually pretty self-sufficient now. He can just kind of chill in his room and entertain himself, and it's not a big deal. But the puppy is actually the harder part. So it's like, feed the puppy breakfast, and then Leo, keep an eye on things. We're leaving for a bit, and then, you know, get back by lunch. So we can sneak out for about that long, and things are good. I've been, you know, playing games. I still do need to play TFT though. So even though I'm not streaming, you know, keeping up on the live meta. So I've been playing some of that, watching some movies, things like that. But overall, I'm also somebody who likes to accomplish things and be productive. And I haven't really had any major things to do. One of the challenges of being productive, like let's say I wanted to take up a project around the house, well, those cost money, you know, and sometimes you need to save money. So now, that being said, today's the 22nd. On the 27th, I finally get my big shelves for my office I ordered months ago. I'll show you guys pictures, but that means I get to finally unpack my game collection, organize shelves. This is so fun for me. I can't wait to do stuff like that. That's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, and so I find myself actually kind of like doing some reflecting and doing some thinking, but trying to come up with what new things I want to do. And so, for example, this walk the dog thing, that was something I came up with during these weekends where I'm thinking, I kind of miss streaming, you know. Again, having that sense of purpose on my weekends drives me, and I kind of miss that. So probably not as relaxing as I think some people wanted me to be, but they are relaxing. Like I said, Charlene's enjoyed it. Getting to spend some time with her has been good. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I probably should do more, but it is what it is. I find myself, again, creature of habit. I find myself playing old games, Binding of Isaac, Mega Man X. I still dabble in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. God knows why. you know. But yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I do on the weekends. Not really. Help my wife around the house. Make sure the puppies, give the puppy walks. Still trying to get Evie trained. Oh God, Evie. Evie, for whatever reason, she loves my wife super well with her. Same with the daughter. For me, whenever she sees me, she gets very, very excited. Very, very excited. To the point where she pees. She'll just pee a little bit. And every time. And so it's like, I try to be nice. I'm like, I would love to give this dog some attention and play tug the rope with her or fetch with her. Well, got to make sure she already went out first, because otherwise she's just going to pee. And it's like, God damn it. So if you've ever been so excited to watch my stream or videos that you start to pee a little, A, you're weird, and B, you're my dog. So there you go. All right, those are all the questions I had. Today I did something really crazy. So my meetings were actually normally supposed to be split between yesterday and today, but I moved all of today's meetings to yesterday, got them all done. So it was a bit more of intensive a day. So today I have no meetings, none. And the reason for this is I said, you know what? It's my birthday. What I want to do is just put on my headphones and just get some real good focus time on the work I need to do, not be interrupted. And so I am going to be able to do that this afternoon. I got playtest this morning. That's the only thing. And then from 1 to however long I want, I can just focus on set 15 work. So, which will be fun. I enjoy that. I enjoy being productive. I enjoy making video games. So that's my day. It'll be great. There you go. All right, it is Thursday. Like I said, it's a 3-day weekend coming up. Who knows? Maybe I should figure something out to do. I've got some plans, though. We'll see. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Hopefully you guys keep enjoying these. Don't forget to post questions so I can keep answering them. Appreciate everyone who's asking stuff. And yeah, that's going to do it. All right, that's it for me. Until next time, I'm 42 now. Time keeps marching on. Take it easy.